Hello, I'm Isabel, and this is From Mud. Like a lotus flower floating effortlessly on the surface in all its beautiful glory, it is a symbol of resilience. Because that same gorgeous flower grew from the icky, sticky muck and mud just below the surface. Something beautiful grows from something dark and cold and unyielding. It grows from mud. This channel is all about resilience and wellness in the face of life's challenges. Thanks for joining. Hola, mi gente. It's me, Isabel, from Mud. Thank you for being back here and following along for this series that I've been working on, our family cancer journey, where I detail from diagnosis to death my husband Justin's experience, our experience as a family going through this with our two young kids. My kids were 1 and 3, almost 4, when Justin passed away. So you can imagine it's been a lot. It was a lot to go through. And I'm hoping to continue the series and just kind of wrap things up so you have the full story. I have a lot of ideas of things I want to share after this part of the series is done. And you know the details of what happened from diagnosis until he passed on July 18th, 2024. Just for anyone who happens to be tuning in right now for the first time, I'm Isabel. I'm a master certified health education specialist, certified diabetes care and education specialist, certified fitness trainer. I've worked in the field of health and wellness as a health educator, health coach, community outreach person for the past 13 years. And I started this channel because I wanted to combine my knowledge and experience in health and wellness and self-care and taking care of our body, mind, and spirit that I've been engaging in for the past 13 years, and combine that expertise with my experience of this major health crisis in a family with young kids as a spouse and watching them decline and leave this earth. This wasn't my first go around watching somebody die, and this wasn't my first go around watching someone suffer with major health issues, with a terminal illness, with a progressive illness, chronic illness. And however, it was probably the most impactful loss just because he was the father of my children. We had plans to live a life together just like anybody does after you get married and start having kids. So yeah, it's not a completely unique story. There's obviously many people out there in my exact shoes or with some details that are different, but experiencing this type of hardship and loss. However, it's definitely not the norm by any means. So I thought it would be helpful to share our experience, share our story, and just share anything I think might be helpful for anyone going through this or not going through this, but maybe there's something helpful in there anyway. So without further ado, I am going to keep it moving. I'm going to keep moving forward in the story. This episode should be the end of this story because I'm going to go through the final couple months that Justin lived on this earth and just kind of detail the cascade of events that happened. All right. So I'm going to give some dates and things, and hopefully this will help just kind of keep the timeline straight. So it was Memorial Day 2024. So that's around the end of May, May 26th. So on May 26th, he stood up from the couch. We were all in the playroom playing with the kids, and Justin stood up from the couch like normal just to go to the other room, and he had a wincing, stabbing pain. So he stood up. Oh, something hurt on the side of his body. It was sharp at first, and then it seemed to go away, but then it started crescendoing in pain throughout the day. We were doing lots of pain management, lots of that at home, contacting Mayo to help get the pain managed. It was in the right side of his middle back area, but then it wrapped all the way around the front. The next day, the pain was improved, but not as much as he had hoped. And in the afternoon, he had a fever. It was 102.6. So at that point, we went to the ER, the local ER. So we still hadn't made the call to always go to Mayo Clinic at this point, but I think is the point where we did decide to do that. So for the next couple days, he was in the hospital. They found that that radiating pain was caused by a hematoma. So a hematoma, or a blood suffusion, is a localized collection of blood outside of blood vessels, usually caused by an injury or trauma to the area. It is similar to a bruise, but more serious and involving a larger amount of bleeding that forms a raised bump. Hematomas can develop anywhere in the body, and while most are harmless, those affecting vital organs can be life-threatening. So he got that hematoma on his trunk. He was also treated for sepsis in the hospital upon arrival due to the cluster of symptoms he was experiencing, including the fever and the elevated heart rate. And when he got out, he was feeling slightly better, but not a lot better. He was very fatigued. He came home, and then over the next week and a half, he just wasn't improving that much. But he wanted to just try to make it to his 3-month scans, which were coming up soon. He continued to have fevers that would come and go each day, as well as night sweats, chills, fatigue, nausea. So this goes on between May 29th or so until about June 8th. So, maybe a week and a half, like I said. So June 8th comes, and we're back at the local ER because he's just not feeling better. It is not improving. He's felt crappy the whole time. So we go back to the local ER. They found early developing pneumonia, so they treated him for that as well, and making sure that the hematoma was in fact reducing in size, and typically the body just actually absorbs it. So they wanted to make sure that the body was absorbing it appropriately. During that time, we reviewed his scans as well on the phone with the oncologist. And it was an okay report. It wasn't like the craziest thing. However, they told us most of the cancer appeared stable. There was decreased cancer in the liver, a little new growth in the chest and abdomen. So originally we took that as a win, but later we were told that because there was new growth in the chest and abdomen, that means that the medication he was on has stopped working. It stopped holding the cancer back. So it was time to switch to basically our last typical option. So when we went in for that first time in May, after the hematoma, the next day after Memorial Day, he had the hematoma, which we didn't know was a hematoma. But once we got there, we learned that we needed to stop the chemo treatment that he was on because it has a side effect of bleeding. So with the hematoma, that was why they asked him to stop the chemo treatment. After appointment with the doctor regarding the scans, he was advised to start it up again though. So we ended up stopping the chemo treatment because of the hematoma, because the chemo he was on had a side effect of bleeding. So we needed to stop that for some time. So June 8th or so, somewhere around there, so a couple weeks after the hematoma situation on Memorial Day. So he stays at the local ER for several days, 3 to 4 days. And they're just monitoring, treating him for the pneumonia and the hematoma, just making sure everything's going the right direction. Before leaving the hospital, the doctor did tell us that we need to follow up with Mayo Oncology ASAP because of the scans. We talked to Mayo, and they basically reiterate and that worried us, but we spoke to Mayo, and they kind of reiterated a similar thing about the scans, but that was when they told us the new growth means the current treatment is no longer doing enough to hold this cancer back, and that it's time to switch to the next option. So he advised Justin to start one of the 2 new chemo pills in the meantime until we get the other medication ordered. This was really disheartening because we had hoped we'd have more time on this treatment before having to move on, but it was what it was. So, and also later in the month, so it was June 8th, so June 26th or so, 27th, we were expected to go to Rhode Island to visit his brother, his brother's husband, and their two kids. And just, we have tried, this would have been the second, maybe even third time we've tried to go visit at this time of year, because they have a big July 4th thing over there, and it's just a nice time to be there in the summer, and it's a terrible time to be in the desert, so it just is the perfect time for us to come. I want to say this was for sure at least the second, but maybe the third time. The first time we had planned to come was, so we found out about the cancer June 3rd or 4th. I think it was June 3rd because that's my late grandmother's birthday. And I remember thinking, oh, it's Abuela's birthday that we found this out. So it was right around there that we found out. We were expected to go to Rhode Island later that month, but because of the news, we had to cancel that trip. So this is the second time we've canceled this specific trip because of cancer. So it was very disheartening. We were really, obviously, because of Justin's health situation at the time, there was a lot of pressure to want to get over there to Rhode Island. So at this point, Justin is still not willing to make the call yet that we're not going to go. That doesn't come until very close to our trip. And we were also going to go with his mom. So it was going to be all four of us, and they hadn't met our daughter yet. And we were really looking forward to it, especially because those previous months with Justin had been so great. He was building up his strength. We were feeling like, let's get all the things in that we can. So we were really looking forward to it. But between June 8th and June 23rd, so that's like almost 2 weeks, there was not much improvement. He was feeling still very tired. Fever still kept coming and going. He wasn't able to help much with the kids. He was in a lot of pain. So that's getting close to about a month, where that initial hematoma came on May 26th or so, and now we're at June 23rd, and he's still feeling like crap, not feeling improved, and not protected by any chemo at this time. And really, that is the key. I think that he did not have any chemo on board. And as I reflect, I don't think there's any way to fill the hole of those transitions when one med stops working and then it's time to switch. It seems like when I reflect on his story and his situation, there's nothing that can be done medically in the in-between. And that's when all the danger starts happening. When he had his first really rough summer of 2023, that's because the chemo stopped working and the cancer just went nuts. It's just, rabid, like rhabdoid features. It really lives up to that rabid energy. It's just wild and aggressive and angry and just ready to expand the moment it gets an opportunity. And that's kind of what happened. That's why Justin went down like this, because he didn't have chemo on board, and really we were running out of options. So that next one, who knows if it would have given him a couple more weeks or anything like that, but I don't think it would have given him a lot of time. So that's just kind of why things went down like that, because he was not protected by any kind of chemo from this evil, menacing cancer that he got. So June 23rd to June 28th-ish, so this is about a month after the initial hematoma. So he seemed to be getting worse at this point. Specifically, his breathing became very labored. He started to be very short of breath. He couldn't speak a few words without having to take a breath. He started to kind of like go down. And I started noticing like, hey, he looks like he's losing weight again. He seems weaker. And then with the breathing and then an elevated heart rate in the 130s, that's kind of what led us to say, we're a few days out from when we're supposed to leave to Rhode Island, and you're still in this rough of shape. I think it's time that we call it. He was very reluctant to call it. I felt it was obvious that we were not going to be able to go, but he kept waiting. He wanted to see if he would turn a corner and if we could make it happen. I'm sure he knew that like if we didn't go this time, we weren't going to. So I'm figuring that that's probably why he was so reluctant to call it earlier, but around a few days before we were supposed to leave, he called it and we went ahead and canceled the trip, which was a heartbreaker. Honestly, that was so hard. I mean, it felt like so many things had been taken from us because of cancer, and this was just another thing, another experience, another time with family, another bunch of happy memories that we wouldn't get to have because of stupid cancer. And at this time also, I was in the hospital with him, but I was working. So I'd be there with him with my laptop doing my work. Thankfully, I was doing less health coaching, so I didn't have to be in appointments with patients. I had my director title, Associate Director of Health and Wellness. I say director because the company had not hired or planned to hire a director for several years. At that point, it had already been almost 3 years without anybody above the associate director in the department. And we were expected to complete all the duties of both roles. So I call myself the director. The company refused to give me the title at the end, even though that was the work that I did. But anyway, that is a whole side thing. I was there doing my work. I also had inherited a problematic employee upon my promotion in April, the few months prior, and I was still dealing with that. So it was just all these things are happening, and then you're dealing with problem employee that you now have to find all the old emails and things that they did and make these performance improvement plan reports. And meanwhile, your husband is over here almost dying right in front of your eyes, but life is going on, and this is life. We can't just stop things to deal with the other things that seem more important. But unless you are independently wealthy and you don't have to work, you probably, if you're going through this, if you have gone through anything similar to this, you know that you still have to work and you still have to make things happen and you still have to make your kids' lives go round. And there's no one that can come save you when it comes to that. You just got to get through it. But anyway, let me get back to Justin's story. Okay, so we cancel our Rhode Island trip and it was just time to go to the ER. This time we decided to go to Mayo Clinic, and we made this decision at the second ER visit at our local ER that we need to always go to Mayo. So yeah, it was at this point, which was our last Mayo trip, really. So it took us up until the last one to decide this is where we'll always go. And like I said, it's 40 minutes away. So with kids in school needing to be picked up at certain special times, it's not always convenient to have to go that far to an ER. I'm sure other people live in places where that's the norm, but we had a local ER that was 10 minutes down the road. But Mayo was a better choice for the ease of communication and coordinating with his entire oncology team and all the other specialty teams, especially if they do scans on site. Everyone gets that in their system so much faster than when we were at the other ER, which is not a Mayo ER. The hospital we went to it technically wasn't Surprise. It was Banner Del E Webb Medical Center in Sun City West most of the time, but this time we decided to go straight to Mayo. And I remember the night before we left, and Justin's mom was going with us on the trip to Rhode Island. She still went, which we felt was the right choice at the time because she has other grandkids there who are counting on her and us to come visit. So we felt it was good for her to go, and we just didn't think things were going to quickly go downhill for him. We just thought he could, get treatment and just feel a little bit better and keep moving it along. At this point, right before this point, I still was thinking and hoping that he would make it past Christmas. However, at this point, it's June 28th, 3 weeks or so prior to him passing. So he's very close to the time for him. But that's my mindset is, we're supposed to have more time on this chemo. So therefore he should be able to make it to 40 and we should be able to get through one more Christmas. So let's see. But those thoughts came into the reality of the moment very quickly. Even though I'm a an optimistic person and I'm a positive minded person, I can accept the reality of things pretty quickly. I don't know if that's some sort of skill I gained from living with an abusive alcoholic and learning how to survive that situation, or the various people I have watched on their deathbed pass, like Justin's grandparents, my mom, Justin's dad, and now Justin. I don't know if all of those collective experiences led to me being able to compartmentalize things and also just accept when the worst has arrived and we need to accept the moment. But soon after this, I had to accept this moment because the hospital staff made sure I understood the gravity of where things were at in just a couple days. But the day before we went to the hospital, and I was supposed to work, but I called off that day because the night before, I was looking at Justin. He was on the couch, and I think our baby girl might have been asleep, and then our son was sitting next to him. I don't remember if we were just talking or we were doing something, but I looked at Justin, and the way he looked so sickly and kind of staring off and just very weak and very shallow breaths, just like that, breathing. And that was how he was breathing at the time. And he just looked so sickly. And for a moment, I thought he had died right in front of us, right there on the couch while we were sitting there. It wasn't like I thought he did. It was more like, well, I didn't really think he did. I was scared he might have. It's like I saw this one meme one time that was like when you have an older animal like a cat or a dog and you look over at them and they seem so still and not breathing that you think they might have died. It was a similar type of thing. I looked over at him and for a moment I was like, oh, there's Justin. And then I see it looks like he's almost not moving and his eyes were open and staring off and he looked so weak. And I just had this in my mind. I'm like, Justin. And he looked up at me. He was like, what? I was like, nothing, just making sure you're okay. You look not good. We need to go to the hospital tomorrow. So he was basically like, okay. He wasn't like, yeah, I agree. He was like, okay, fine. If you think I look this bad, I guess we need to. I'm like, yeah, I think we need to. You are breathing like every second, loud, like labored breathing. So we get through the night. The next day, we take the kids to school. I call off work and we go straight to the Mayo Clinic ER. He was in rough shape when he arrived. He was extremely dehydrated. He was fatigued. He was just kind of not there. His breathing was very shallow. He couldn't really say but a few words before having to take a breath, like I had said earlier, and the fever was there. He lost a good amount of muscle. The pain was excruciating all over the place for various reasons, including muscle loss, weakness, and just the cancer pushing up on things and popping up in different places it's never was before, like his shoulder. He wasn't forward and above his head because of the new bit of cancer that popped up there. So like the cancer is just growing. So June 29th and June 30th, now he's in the hospital at Mayo Clinic. They get him checked in. They start working on him right away, start trying to get him stabilized. And we find out that he walked in with sepsis pneumonia. He had very severe pneumonia that was not responding to the typical antibiotic treatments. Respiration rate is way too high. The oxygen is way too low. The pulse is too high. His body's just working overtime all around. That was when we found out about the cancer that had spread to his shoulder, which was why he was having such terrible pain there and the range of motion being reduced. So he was off chemo for about 3 weeks or so, and it just went nuts on him, this cancer. And the pneumonia became a major concern. So if you remember earlier in the month, June 6th or so, that was when they said early onset pneumonia, and they said they were working on it. So I don't know if it was a second bout of pneumonia or if that one just never went away because it was not responding because of the weakened immune system and his body with the weight loss thing. That's how you can tell like his body was feeding the cancer. The cancer was now eating his calories again. So again, cancer's just going ham on him. So that June 29th, June 30th time frame, I want to say that next day. And then this is when my sisters and their mom, they were engaged to assist. So they came down from an hour and a half north. Again, my mother-in-law was still in Rhode Island. So my sisters and their mom, they came down, and my dad was also in the mix. Again, I don't want to rely on him, but unfortunately, when things are so dire, sometimes he's like one of the few people around who's willing to help. As many problems as I have with my dad and as many grievances I have about how he treated us and continues to treat us, he is a person who wants to help, and he has the capacity to help, and he will probably never turn his back on us, me and my siblings. He doesn't do things the right way, but he was there, and he did already know how to pick up and drop off the kids from daycare. So we kind of needed him. So sisters and their mom, I'll call her Allie. So sisters and Allie came down to help, and they just took over seamlessly. My kids, they made sure they had a good time. They play with them. They would go in the pool, because we did have a pool, and it was summer in the desert, so it was pool season, and they just made sure that the kids knew nothing about anything that was happening at the Mayo Clinic. So I'm just beyond grateful to have had that support close enough by that they could come and take over and run the ship. Thank you, Allie, because you are rock star auntie mama who knows how to just keep it moving, keep it running. You know what to do with all the kids, and the kids were happy, and my sisters also were such a major factor. They were, I want to say 14 and 11, or 13 and 11 at the time. So you guys just, I couldn't have done all that without. I would have had to either bring the kids to the hospital with me or not be able to be there for Justin. So I'm just, again, I think of situations where it could always be worse. Like, there's someone out there right now experiencing this in the same way that I was, but they don't have the support, and they have to have their little kids with them while their husband is dying or their partner is dying in the hospital, and the kids are watching it. I count my blessings about even this situation. So that day, so maybe the day or two after, I want to say it was like maybe the day after he was admitted, or probably the next day, because that was when he was in the biggest danger zone, was upon arrival, until he was eventually released on July 3rd. So June 28th, he was admitted. July 3rd, he was released. It was a miracle, I will just say. So June 28th, he comes in, he's in rough shape. They're like, oh, wow, he's got sepsis pneumonia. Let's see what we can do here. The next day, I am there, and we're just waiting, and people come in, and there's like many people coming in. It seemed like students. And we had every specialist coming in to talk to everybody. So I started getting hints that, things were not going well. And now I don't know if Justin is becoming an educational point for these students. Being a person somewhat in this field, I get it, because it is interesting, and it's a young person. You know, you don't typically see as many young people with this, and to be in the state that he was in. So I get it. But it kind of was a clue of like, this is not going well, and they are not thinking this is going well. So they started telling us in their way that this pneumonia, well, especially telling me privately, this pneumonia could end his life because of how much he had working against him. And this is when they did spell it out for us that the reason this is all happening is because of the cancer. So at this point, there's not going to be much that can be done unless the cancer can be controlled and kept under control, but it cannot. So at this point, this could be kind of the end. This pneumonia can be the end for him. But they wanted to throw everything at it. So they had pulmonology, they had infectious disease. They started him on high intensity oxygen treatments to help with the breathing. They got him on all the types of anti-medications, antibiotics, antiviral, antifungal. They threw everything at the pneumonia in case it was a different type of pneumonia. We spoke to palliative care, especially me privately. Like I said, they kind of pulled me to the side, discussed a lot of difficult things, and basically told me that, and this was coming from Hannah. She was the nurse practitioner in palliative care who we had been working with for the previous 2 years. And she sat me down and she said, there is a chance, and I don't think he will be able to make it out of here, because she was talking to me about hospice and what I might want to do, and I should get hospice people in here to talk to them and understand our options. And she said, right now he's on that high intensity oxygen, and if we take him off, it basically, like, if he can't make it out of the building without that, he will have to stay here because there is no high intensity oxygen in hospice. And she was like, I don't think he will make it to an inpatient hospice facility. So if he goes here, that might happen. She warned me. She's like, this might happen. So it was a very difficult conversation that she had with me. She helped me understand how hospice all works and when you engage hospice and what that looks like. And she had hospice people come in that day and talk to us again. And at this point, I'm talking to Justin's brother and saying, hey, they are telling us that if you and mom want to see Justin alive, you should not wait. You should come now. So mom had just flown out there a few days prior. She turned back around and flew back home. And Justin's brother came the next day to be with Justin. But so that day I was texting my closest people. I was telling everyone near us that they are telling me he may not make it out of here. He may die in this hospital. He may die from the pneumonia. He's not looking good, but it can go either way. They said the vitals are starting to look a little bit better, but we don't know yet if he's going to be able to come out of this. So she really tried to prepare me for that. And at that point, I was not ready for that. I just was like, oh my God, it's happening. I just didn't think this was going to happen right now. I really thought we were going to make it through this year. But yeah, this could be it. So at this time, I had so many people rallying around us, mostly supporting me, but it was like holding our entire family. A lot of people offering to come to our aid. My sisters, obviously, and Allie and my dad were able to come for the weekend and stay while my mother-in-law was gone so that I could be with Justin. And also when she came back, so that way she could be with her son as well. So I would spend most of the day with Justin, and then I spent the night at the hospital with him. And he was super annoyed at me because I kept pestering him about doing his lung expansion exercises with that machine with the little ball. If anyone's ever had to do that, you blow out the machine and the little ball has to be at a certain level and it helps you with your lung expansion. So I kept bothering him to do it and he kept getting annoyed at me. And also forcing him to keep drinking water. Thankfully, he at this point, after the previous summer, he was always on IV hydration infusions, and those helped significantly because he just couldn't take in water through his mouth. So, I kept bugging him to do all those things, and he was a little bit annoyed, but I think he also always appreciated when me or like his mom in particular would care for him and just, make sure he was eating and check in on him. So I think even though he might have been annoyed, I think he appreciated it, and just lots of rubs and cuddles and I love yous and me sitting next to him. And one thing he would always say that he's like, nothing really gives me any relief or comfort except for you rubbing my head. He was always a physical touch person. He always liked to be cuddled by me. He always liked head rubs, head scratches, hand rubs, hand massage. But the head rubbing, that was our thing. We would do that every single day because I knew that he told me that nothing brings him relief except for that. It was like, if I can do something that actually brings you some happiness and peace and relief, I'm grateful to have that tool in the toolbox. That is something I can actually do that makes him happy and makes him feel better in the midst of all of this suffering. So head rubs and scratches and rubs in general and hand massages and hand tickles and stuff like that. That was part of our daily routine and our daily interactions. I probably rubbed his head every single day, especially after all the summer hardships. But even before that, and even before cancer, but it became especially meaningful because of what he told me, that it's one of the few, if not the only thing that truly brings him some relief and some comfort. So lots of that hospital night, especially because I was thinking he might die. So he makes it through the night, and the next day he is miraculously better. His fever dropped to about 99 and had been holding for about a day. It might have even gone into the normal range at that point. So it was, and then vitals were all improved, including his heart rate. And then they were going to do a procedure to see what's in his lungs so that that can inform his treatment. There is like a big shadow, and they weren't 100% sure that was the pneumonia. I think they thought it was something else, but they were basically saying like, this is the day that's going to tell us whether he turns the corner or not. They were going to do x-rays and see what's being indicated there, but he did turn the corner. So after that, he started improving, each day. And then July 3rd, he was well enough to leave the hospital. He came off of the high intensity oxygen and he just was feeling better. And, we did have the kids come visit him and my sisters and everything while he was there. My mother-in-law and my brother-in-law were there. So then we could switch off, and I was, again, still working. So sometimes it would be like, okay, mother-in-law and brother-in-law, can you be there with Justin while I go work? And so that's what we would kind of switch out, especially once he was out of the major danger zone. And I don't know, but when I was going to sleep the night that it was like, who knows what's going to happen to him, and they had talked to me about hospice and all this kind of stuff, and it was like, let's see what happens through the night. I remember going to sleep and I just felt this presence of like, I don't know how else to describe it, but I felt like death was looming. It was like death was hanging out in the room waiting to see if it was going to claim him. And the next day he just woke up better. He woke up better. He woke up with all those improvements, and they were like, you know what? Like, if you're going this way, then I think we might be able to get you home. And then I was already equipped with all the knowledge of hospice and what I would need to do to engage that. And Hannah from palliative care, she took me to the side again, and she was like, we have been given the gift of time with Justin. Everything, she was like, he could have gone because of the sepsis pneumonia that he walked in here with. This is a miracle. You have been given this gift. Everything is extra right now. Kind of that. I just remember her words. We have been given the gift of time with Justin. And I held on to that, and I was like, she's so right. This could have been it, but we get a little more time with him. Who knows how long that's going to be, but we get a little more time with him. So he got out on July 3rd, got him home, and he was initially very concerned that he made the wrong call leaving the hospital because he felt so bad and so scared and just was like, I want to get back to the hospital where they have all the things. And then me in my mind trying not to react out loud is like, no, please don't go back to the hospital, because like, what if things go wrong again? And like, I just wanted him home. I just wanted him to be able to be home. But he was very worried. He was worried about his breathing and the pain. Those two things were still not perfectly managed for him. So he felt like he was gasping for air, and he felt like the pain was so severe and it's still not under control. So it was on July 6th. So we had July 4th, and he really couldn't participate. He mostly just laid on the couch and looked outside, and we just did our little sparkler things with his brother and his mom and my kids and me. And then 2 days later, July 6th, we kind of made the call to engage in-home hospice. So we went ahead and did that. And I remember at the time we were kind of telling, because Justin was like, well, doesn't that mean like I'm going to die? Like, you do hospice when you're dying. And we kept telling him like, right now the hospice is going to get you comfortable. Right now, you're in such an amount of discomfort, and you're not allowed to take certain medications unless you are choosing hospice. People do go on to hospice and then come out of hospice. So it's not always 100% you're going to die right now, but it's like, at this point, is it more important to endure all this pain and discomfort and see if you can come out of it to go on your cancer treatment meds? Or is the priority right now just to get comfortable and settled? And then, if things go the right way, then like they're going to let you do your medication. That was another thing. He's like, so if I go hospice, I can't do my cancer treatment. And it was determined that no, you can choose that. You can still do the cancer med if you want. So he was like, okay, yeah, let's do it. So he was a little reluctant, but it was the right call. It's just a hard thing when you're being faced with basically kind of like accepting that you're choosing to stop trying for life-saving medications and stuff. So it can feel like you're giving up. But at this point, choosing to go into hospice, the choice becomes obvious, I think. So we mobilize in-home hospice. They came in, they got everything set up. He got a nice hospital bed that adjusts. He had just all the things, the medications. He was able to get on stronger pain medications, and they monitor regularly. They got him an oxygen tank, oxygen machine, which helped a lot. It was super loud, and it was there the rest of the time that he was alive. So we get hospice in, they're all set up. We understand the whole thing. Then Justin's brother goes back to Rhode Island. An uncle comes to visit from California. My dad visits with him, and he's feeling pretty awake and alert most of the time. The rest of this time from this point until he passed, but he does also rest a lot during the day during this time. And we started out having him. We actually put the hospice bed in the loft play area, the playroom where we usually would hang out because that's where we spent most of our time. And I also started doing meals up there with the kids and him so that everyone could be together for meals. So at that point, he's home now. He's on hospice. He's starting to get more comfortable. And at this point, it's about 12 days out from when he passes. Oh, and in the hospital, they also offered to record his heartbeat so that I could take the little recorded buttons that they gave me, their little heart buttons, and I could put them into a Build-A-Bear bear to give to the kids with his heartbeat on it. And they also recorded it on my phone, which I'm glad they have learned enough times that you need to also record it on the phone so that you can keep the recording if the little buttons somehow get re-recorded on or messed up somehow, or like what actually eventually happened, which it was a good idea to do the bear. But when you get it at Build-A-Bear, they sew it in. So if the battery dies on it, that's it. You don't get to have that as part of the bear anymore. So that was something I've learned just recently because that happened with my daughter's bear and now my son's one too. So something to keep in mind. But during these 2 weeks, it was basically, well, first of all, I have amazing friends who came into town from California. They have their own lives and their own families and everything. But I had 2 different groups come the first week after he was back. They came. 2 of my friends came. One is actually in Texas. So they both came, one from California, one from Texas. They came to our house and just stayed with us. They helped me with meals and the kids and anything Justin needed, just keeping Justin company while I'm doing things and, friend conversation with Justin and just all that. They just helped with everything around the house and the kids and him and me. And I was working again. And then my daughter got sick and thankfully they were there. So they were able to help me with her and stay home with her so that I can continue what I'm doing. They left and then another friend came in and then she was actually with us with her 2-year-old at the time. And that was nice too because my kids could play with her and they again had that distraction. And then my friend, she was able to help me a lot with again the same kinds of things. And during that final week of Justin's life, when my friend was there with her 2-year-old, there were a lot of times where Justin really needed me to help him. And so she would scoop up my kids and her kid and they would just all go to the room and do cute stories. And it was just, again, I'm so lucky that I have such a solid support system in different places and they will mobilize and come to help. During this time, I could be in the same exact situation with no help. And there is someone out there right now doing the same exact thing with no help and with harder circumstances and the same heartbreaking situation. So again, I always just count my blessings and they are so many. But these 2 weeks before Justin passed, or these 12 days before Justin passed, once we were home, I started getting on top of a lot of different memorial type things that I really wanted to get in place while I still had him. I made him do a hand casting and he chose to do his rock on symbols. So one hand, one for each kid with a rock on, which is pretty cool. And we love that. And then crazy story is the house we ended up moving into here in Portland. On the street, just a couple houses away, is this tree that looks like unmistakably a rock on symbol with a hand. It's crazy. If I could post it somewhere, I will, but it's unmistakable. Anyone who looks at it thinks that. They're like, oh, it looks like a hand doing a rock on. Yeah. So it was just one of those signs for me that was like, yeah, this move is supported. Justin's supporting me. He's with me. And this is his little nod to me. So he did his rock on hands, plastered, one for each kid that I carry around the house, that I have around the house now with me. And I've moved it from Arizona to here. I also had him do fingerprints so that I could do different things with his fingerprints. Like I wanted to do a necklace with his fingerprint. I had him write out "I love you" to each of the kids, just like his full name, so that I could make a stamp for it later and put his signature in and his "Love Dad" things in their birthday cards moving forward. I had this book that I had gotten him that was "Dad, I want to hear your storybook," and I was able to sit with him like each night and during the day and just jot some of his life stories down, some of his favorite trips, and whatever the questions are in there, I was able to get a lot of it written out. And if there were things I felt like I knew the answers and I could write it out, I skipped those just because I was trying to get through the book. So we'd sit there and we'd do that. One thing he always wanted from me, and this sounds so silly, but we could never come to a point of agreement about this request that he would have of me, that he would not so kindly request. Not that he was mean about it, but it was more of I want you to do it the way I want you to do it. Was he wanted me to do no phone time at the end of the days. And he'd be like, I want to do no phone. You look at your phone all the time. You're always on your phone. I want to do no phones at night sometime. And I was like, okay, but like, I don't know, not to go too far into this because it really doesn't matter. But my thing was like, I'm busy all the time. I'm dealing with all these things. And, like, I'm not going to say this to his face, but like your illness and like my work and then the kids. And then like I have a lot on my shoulders. And by the end of the day, all I want to do is just sit down and zone out on my phone. And that's what I want to do. And you're telling me I can't do that. So he always wanted me to do some no phone time. And I was always like, I'm willing to do it for this time frame. Like give me a time frame, because I don't want to be like no phones forever. Because again, like I'm trying to just chill for like a few minutes, longer than a few minutes, but I'm trying to chill and just look at my phone and just zone out like everybody else. And I only have a few hours at the end of the night to do it. So you're wanting me to do no phone. And it's like, I already don't have much time for this, but it was important to me to give him that time. And so that, and we also were big Survivor fans, and that has been part of our connection this whole time. When we were just starting to date, he was really into Survivor, and I thought it was kind of dorky, but then he got me into it. And then we had watched almost all the Survivor seasons back in the day. And then once we were caught up on, I think we only missed like 2 seasons that exist of Survivor, but we ended up always watching Survivor, and because of everything that had been happening, we didn't get to finish that season. So I told him, let's finish Survivor and let's have a date night. So I was like, and I won't be on my phone. So I made sure that we got at least one or several of those in where I'm not on my phone and we're just sitting together and we're watching Survivor and eating dinner together and doing like little date night kind of thing. I think those were the main things that I really wanted to make sure. I filmed him saying I love you to the kids. I had him film something or record something in the hospital too, just in case that was goodbye. Those recordings are very, very difficult to listen to in general, they're very intense, but the thing that is really hard about them is that his voice is so labored and so weak that it just almost doesn't sound like him. So I struggle with owning that now, and if I would ever want my kids to have that. I mean, I think I will, just because I think they deserve to have it if they want it. But it is a very upsetting recording, just because, yeah, he's not him. He doesn't sound like himself. I wish he wasn't ready for these types of things, but I wish something could have been recorded when he first found out and his voice was still the same and he was still kind of like himself. But it's okay. It is what it is. It worked out the way it did and it needed to, and it's fine. It is what it is. So we're doing a lot of these memorial type things to just make sure that I'm getting things in place, and I have my plan in place for what's going to happen when he passes, how I'm going to handle it with the kids. I had this idea, and I'll do a separate episode about all the ways that the the social workers at Mayo helped me prepare my kids for this eventual his passing. And I'll do that a separate thing, but I had this idea to do like a gift from heaven for when Dad passes. And we're not religious. I'm spiritual, but that, to me, that's the easiest way to explain what I believe will happen after we pass. So I wanted to do this gifts from heaven thing. So I got a few things that actually I had gotten for the trip to Rhode Island with the kids, but we canceled it. So I just put a lot of those things in the bag, and like I put bath bombs. I had like a little digital camera, busy board, and then the 2 bears. I wrote a note from Daddy from Heaven, and that was my plan. I was going to give that to them when he passes, to just kind of let them know, what had happened. So basically these 2 weeks were pretty good. He's pretty functional this whole time. He's actually able to mostly do everything he needed himself. I just mean he didn't need me to wipe him, or he needed minimal help bathing from either me or his mom. So he had his little bath chair that I got for him. So he would sit there and we would help him, and he was still able to, get up, walk there, sit down and hold the shower thing, and maybe couldn't scrub most of his body, but he could do some, and then he'd get out and he need some help getting dressed, but he could also help himself. And so he wouldn't always be able to walk to the bathroom quickly. So he had like a, bedside urinal, and I would help him clean that out and bring him a new one. And then anytime he needed meds, I would stay on top of his meds, or, make sure I give him whatever he needs, or if he needs a heating pad, or if he needs ice, or if he needs something warm for his feet, or whatever he needed, food. At this point, he's starting to also have trouble swallowing, especially getting closer to the time, and he would have these like cough attacks. That was already going on, the coughing thing, for a long time, but he would have these like cough attacks, or like eating something would cause him to cough a bunch. And so we started having to use this liquid that the hospice people have it's like a liquid thickener, and it was weird. It makes it into kind of like a jelly texture, and that's how he was drinking all of his water. It was super weird. If you don't have that problem with the swallowing, it tastes weird and not enjoyable. But once we got that stuff that thickened up the liquid, very close to his passing, like probably the last few days, he was so relieved. It was like he drank water for the first time. He's like, oh my God, I can drink. Like, he couldn't drink anything. He would just have these cough attacks and not be able to get the liquid down. So once they gave us that powder, that helped a lot. He was finally able to drink enough water. He was doing a lot of like Gatorades. He was trying to drink some of those boosts, but it was getting harder and harder. He also couldn't get in the antibiotics. Taking the meds was also getting harder. Eventually, once he got really close to his time, we had a hospice person come in, and they were like, oh, probably like weeks from now, maybe a month, maybe a few months from now. And that was 2 days before he passed. He turned so quickly right at the end. So they come, and he's still hanging in there, and he's doing all of these things. And then we had this one rough night. It would have been 2 days before he passed, because he actually passed at 12:20 a.m. So it was the 16th, that at night he had a really rough night with pain. We could not get the pain under control. I couldn't really get in touch with hospice people quickly enough to make sure I could give him more of the big pain meds. I think at this point he had his fentanyl patches. He was having high doses of morphine. And I think those were the 2 main things. Tylenol. I think he was taking Tylenol regularly as well at this point. And so they had instructed me that I could give him the more morphine, and that they would have someone come out to evaluate and see about getting the more concentrated doses of morphine for him. So they got that underway. But that night he had that crazy amount of pain we could not get under control. Eventually he goes to sleep, and then that next day he wakes up and he's looking at me, and I'm hovering over him and holding his hand, and just he's talking gibberish to me. I just didn't understand. He was saying something and the words just didn't make sense. They weren't even words. It was just, but he was trying to tell me something. And I was like, can you type it on my phone? And I gave it to him, and he just typed a bunch of letters. He couldn't do it. That last day was he went into non-talking, and then that was the end pretty much of him talking. So a lot of loved ones calling, and I told them I would hold the phone up to his ear so that he could hear them and they could say whatever they wanted to say. And he would genuinely react almost every single time someone was in his ear. And that's what the hospice people told us, that the last sense to go is hearing. So talk to them, speak to them. They hear you. They are hearing you. So just know that. And so I felt like every time I would hold the phone up to his ear for somebody, he would react. He would move, or he would moan, or he would react every time. And he would be just chilling before that. So like I knew he heard all the messages, everything people said to him. So then by the end of the day, lots of I love yous, lots of, it's okay, we're going to be okay, you can let go, we'll be okay. A lot of that kind of stuff. Because that's what you want your loved ones to hear. You don't want them to leave and worry about you any more than they already are. So I got him all the medications he needed to stay comfortable. I was keeping him very comfortable and making sure that he was not in any kind of pain. And I went to sleep probably around 11 or 10, probably close to 11 or so. An hour and a half later, 12:20 a.m., 12:22 or so. I think it was 12:21 actually when I looked at the clock. And his mom comes over to me and pats me in the dark of my room and, Izzy, Justin's gone. He's passed. So I get out of bed, of course, and walk over to him and just hold his hand. Just kiss him on the forehead. His skin was getting colder. And just tell him I love him. That we're going to be okay. And that I'm proud of him. And that I love him. And thank you for everything. And that I'll miss him. That I'll take care of the kids. I just held him, held his hand, hugged him, said goodbye to the body I knew him as. And then down to business, right? Gotta start calling people, get things going. So I called the organization I had selected for cremation, which is what Justin wanted. It was after.com. It was all digital cremation services and memorial services. So I call them. They send a doctor over to confirm that he has passed, which she does. And then she starts to engage the person who comes to collect the body. And that person eventually comes around 3 a.m. So again, like my friend is in the room with my kids and her kid, and just while we're dealing with all of this, thankfully my dog wasn't freaking out at the time and barking at everybody coming in and out, and everything worked out. He came, he actually had to carry Justin down the stairs, which I shouldn't have watched him do. And I would recommend anyone watching your loved one being taken out to not watch them being taken out One thing I didn't expect was the stiffening up of the body. I knew that happened, but the way he came down the stairs because of it, I didn't expect that, and it was kind of a shock. So his mom was smart, and she laid on the couch, turned around, not watching that part of the person, getting him out of the house. But it's fine. I'm not like scarred from it. I was just like, oh, I kind of wish I didn't see that, but it's fine. He got him down the stairs. This guy literally carried Justin down our pretty steep stairs of the house, put him on the gurney, got him all covered up and everything, and said my last goodbyes to him, and he took his body. And just like that, our world changed. Justin's mom left, and then I didn't see her for a few more days. She honestly kind of disappeared on me. I think everyone processes grief differently, and I don't really think she had the capacity to really be there for me because she was dealing with her own loss at this point as a mom, losing your son and watching him die. And literally she was there. She was holding his hand when he took his last breaths. So now she has been the person there with her dad and her son, their husband, to watch as they make their transition to the great beyond. And that day I did tell the kids, and they handled it okay at the time. They, especially my son, who really understood what was going on, and gave them their gift from heaven, and they kind of moved on from there. It wasn't until the evening when things started to get more intense and sad, and the kids squeezing the daddy bear and just crying out for daddy. But this part of the nightmare was now over, and Justin was resting in peace now. He was not suffering. When my mom passed, my brother said something that stuck with me. He said she's not trapped by her body anymore. And I felt that way about Justin too. He's no longer trapped by his body. He's free. And that was something to be grateful for. So that's the end of the story. There's obviously a lot more to share, and I will over time, but I'm going to go ahead and end things here for this series on Justin and his full cancer journey. I'm grateful for all of the love and support that we received as our family went through this from so many different people. I know that I'm very blessed. And again, that there are people experiencing the same exact situation, but with worse circumstances. And I'm grateful to be at the point where I am now, where I'm living in an amazing place with amazing people around me who I've known for most of my life, who knew Justin, who love my kids too, who know my kids, who understand me, and that I get tons of signs from Justin that he is still with us. And I have zero doubt that Justin's soul lives on, and that he makes himself known to me and our family constantly. And that brings me so much reassurance, knowing that this, for whatever reason, is part of our journey. Our souls were all meant to go through this and experience this, and I trust that it will make sense one day. So I'll just leave off with that. I invite you all to share a little gratitude again as our regular gratitude practice. Life is hard sometimes, and there's always something to be grateful for, even in the midst of that hardship. Sending you all love and light, positive thoughts, healing, and a wish that all suffering is lifted and no longer to be experienced by all the beings of this world. Be well. Bye.